Wow, so this next headline definitely grabbed my attention as, of course, we have Henry Kissinger coming out right now and saying, if we fail to deal with this sickness in the right way, this will, quote, set the world on fire, as he is warning of global economic doom. And there are many implications to bring up about this latest statement, and that's why in this video we're going to be talking about that and the latest geopolitical information surrounding oil, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and a lot more. To do that, we have John Sneisen, an economic historian, joining us for this conversation. But holy cow, this definitely raised a lot of eyebrows. This comes from an opinion piece by the Wall Street Journal that, of course, was written by Henry Kissinger, specifically detailing how this latest sickness needs to be met by urgent work and planning for the United States for their new epoch, because it will forever alter the world order. Again, a lot of new world order meaning here specifically to an individual that is responsible for a lot of the headaches that the United States is dealing with right now. If you remember, it was Henry Kissinger who, with David Rockefeller, that flew over to China and made it the industrial manufacturing slave labor hub that it is, and helped establish it as a tyrannical superpower by cutting deals, specifically getting rid of middle and low-paying jobs here in the United States and sending them over to China and shipping back products here made from their country with no regulations, no rules, and just full control of its citizenry. And now the United States, that's dependent on their medical supplies that they're running out of, that they're literally hijacking planes and buying people off in China to send planes with medical equipment, medical masks that they tell you you don't need, that was supposed to go to France, and they're diverting it to the United States. John, what do you make of this implication, since, of course, many people see Henry Kissinger as this kind of chess maker behind the scenes? He is someone that wields a lot of power within many intelligence organizations. The National Security Advisor under Obama said that he takes daily orders from Henry Kissinger. Donald Trump says Henry Kissinger is one of his best friends, one of his best advisors that, of course, he listens to. What do you make of these latest kind of words saying that what's happening right now is threatening the world order?
Well, it definitely does, because now you see, the hoodlums that created this in the first place, like Kissinger and others, they are, first of all, they're dying off. You got Zbigniew Brzezinski dying, and then others. So what you're seeing is this danger that they're seeing right now, what they created. And of course, Kissinger also went down to Saudi Arabia to start up the petrodollar, which then become the world reserve currency because they priced it in oil in the first place. So, which of course is also adding to the economic woes, as of course Saudi Arabia and Russia are in a war, mass producing oil, which of course is causing another severe ramification economically right now. Just to break that down. Sorry, go ahead, John. Oh yeah, and it does. And of course, there's most nations other than, of course, the Gulf states and Russia, they have to, their cost to make oil is way higher. Russia is like about 18. I think in Saudi Arabia, it's as low as $5 per barrel. But then versus, countries like Norway that has, like between $50 to $60 for a barrel in costs, and the Canada 90, and the U.S. shale oil is like $60, $70. So you can see that there's huge ramifications there. But the reason why Russia and Saudi Arabia is fighting in the first place, I think it has more of a underlying or the thing here, and that is that, of course, Saudi Arabia wants to get a big piece of the pie in Europe, because in Europe, of course, Russia has the energy dominance because Russia is running through Crimea. Remember how they annexed Crimea? It was for a reason. It's because all their pipelines, gas and oil pipelines, comes in there into Europe. And so you're seeing that, and then of course the Syrian war over there, the war that they want to take over Syria and destroy Bashar al-Assad, comes to actually because of that Saudi Arabia wants to build. This is just my opinion, but I've seen a lot of drawings. I looked into this for a while back, and I saw a lot of drawings, drawing lines that they wanted to build a pipeline, but they had to build it through Syria because it's landlocking basically Saudi Arabia, and they have to build it through Syria to get into Europe. So it's very interesting how, all this global political chess playing behind the scenes is happening because we don't understand, the actual underlying fights that are going on between countries that want dominance, that want power around the world, of course. And that's what you're seeing playing out there. And of course, the coronavirus is just throwing monkey wrenches in left, right, and center into this globalist move, because now we're moving more towards nationalism, national protectionism, because people are trying to protect their own citizens and their own governments from, the ramifications that this virus has.
Yeah, some people are even saying that this sickness is actually the kind of globalists' worst nightmare, since of course it's closing down borders, it's closing down schools, indoctrination camps, and also it's exposing China for just the absolute corrupt, tyrannical nation state that is dependent on slave labor, exposing them to the world as this entity that shouldn't be trusted, and waking up a lot of Americans and a lot of other people in the world saying, why are we dependent on our medical supplies, on our medicine from there? Why did we outsource everything important to us? Why did the United States become a service economy and get rid of its manufacturing? Well, we could thank Henry Kissinger for that. And this kind of seems like a warning message by Henry Kissinger, kind of trying to prevent a lot of this, because what he's specifically saying is he's calling for the United States to pitch in to rebuild the global economy and protect the liberal world order. It might be true that this sickness is breaking down this liberal world order and making people more nationalistic, which of course is a big enemy against the globalists. And when we really, or individualism, sovereignty, nationalism, that's the enemy of globalism. And this is why it's important in the larger perspective to always understand, when we see China and we see the United States, yes, there's a conflict for global hegemonic power and authority to be number one between those two countries. There is a possibility of a large insidious trap unfolding here that could mean significant troubling ramifications for everyone. But underlining between all of this are banksters, globalists, and corporations that benefit off of that conflict and use both countries to their own needs and ways. And one of those individuals is, of course, people like Henry Kissinger, the late Rockefeller, the late kind of barons and monopoly holders of industry that are ultimately benefiting from all of this. But this is very interesting because Kissinger also complimented the White House on doing a solid job. The White House telling you maybe you wear a mask, maybe not, as of course they're organizing schemes to rob masks from other countries. He says that the United States is avoiding an immediate catastrophe, but essentially I see these as kind of warning shots by Kissinger saying, no, everything I worked hard for is being destroyed by this virus. Potentially that's one of the scenarios here, one of my own personal theories. What do you see it? How do you see it, John?
Well, I see it even that Kissinger might be, forced by the fiat currency system that we have to actually then, find cheaper ways to manufacture, because over time, as the fiat currency system develops, and they also created these corporations need to pay their shareholders, and then their shareholders wants to fight inflation, so they always need higher and higher payouts on their dividends. So what you're seeing is these corporations were forced to then use Kissinger to go over to China and then try to get that cheap labor, because they had to pay more money over to their shareholders. So they had to then get cheaper labor. And then they actually had to then go out there and get that cheap labor over in China. So that's one of my theories. And of course, over time, they had to go into planned obsolescence. So basically, they got to make cheaper and cheaper stuff that breaks old times to make more and more profits, so they get more and more turnover and so on, right? So yeah, so I think it's a monetary underlying pressure that really has done this. Even though if it was a new world order, it really, like, the system pressures them in that way, no matter what.
And then also there's an emerging middle class in China, which is worth considering and thinking about with this whole entire conversation. But again, I just want to come back to Kissinger's own words and what he's calling for, because he's telling everyone, specifically, telling the administration to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump says he listens to Kissinger, that Kissinger has really good friends that he seeks advice from. But Kissinger is telling Trump now that he must regain not only America's trust, but the world's trust, saying specifically when this is over, many countries and institutions will be perceived as failing everyone. And yeah, they are. The World Health Organization, the CDC, the Surgeon General, they're lying to you about how to take preventative smart measures to make this sickness, not as prevalent as it is. And again, he goes on saying whether the judgment is objectively fair is irrelevant. The reality is the world will never be the same after the coronavirus. And of course, that's a stark warning. And this is extremely eye-opening to see him come out at the age of 96 and proclaim what he is proclaiming right now to the national media and the national public. Anything else you want to add to this specifically, John?
I think they're just worried that, the current paradigm is going to end and they're going to have to enter a new paradigm, no matter what that is. They're just afraid that they're going to lose the power over that paradigm. And a paradigm is basically just a new idea that comes in, and you got to change it. So people are not willing to change. And of course, the global elitists are not willing to change, and they want still control. So they're going to try, my point of view, they're going to just try to go to a global government. And that's why they tried really with the World Health Organization now, pushing really hard to have them, as the main source of information. But then, of course, they are kind of falling apart because there's so much corruption over in the UN and surrounding it. So they're really struggling with this whole, place where you actually see the governments are basically telling people to be more self-reliant and take care of themselves more, because they can't. It's become very
and in part
they're afraid of that.
And in part, Trump has been doing that as well by telling people, and especially governors, like, you're in for yourselves. I'm not going to coordinate anything. As Donald Trump is waging the war on terror and the war on drugs, he's still continuing those practices and prioritizing them during these difficult times, which again makes you question exactly what's happening here. But again, I just kind of want to go back here to what Kissinger is saying. But he's telling the United States it needs to work with the world, specifically offering a program, a three-step program to deal with this situation. And guess what one of his solutions is? He talks about developing new techniques and new technologies for infection control and, get this, commensurate vaccines across large populations. Of course, this shouldn't surprise everyone that we have such a mandate here by Henry Kissinger himself that, again, put the world and China in the position that it is right now, that has essentially created a scenario that is bad for everyone. And when the person who created the problem is offering us solutions, that's when you don't take. That's when you don't bite. I mean, is there any other way to say it there, John?
No, there's not. And think about the actual vaccine manufacturers, too. They're trapped in that same exact game with the corporations needing to pay their shareholders. They have been creating more crappier and crappier vaccines full of garbage like formaldehyde and mercury to, keep their vaccines lasting longer. So, of course, now they're using the government, come in and say, like, well, you can give out free vaccines, but the government should buy all these vaccines. So they're just basically using the government as the enforcement mechanism to try to sell their garbage products in the first place, right? So, yeah, it just comes down to, like, their whole paradigm is falling apart with central banks, going really bad right now. They're on their last deathbeds there, and that is kind of the overlaying paradigm that is falling apart. People are stopping to trust, the currency in itself, and they're so desperate to keep that together, because if that fails, their whole paradigm will fall apart very quickly, Luke.
Yeah, he's writing here, and I quote him: "The pandemic has promoted an anarchism." He literally said, yeah, anarchism, a revival of the walled city in an age when prosperity depends on global trade and movement of people. Again, calling for open borders, calling for immigration, calling for corporations and globalists and banksters to rob you blind while depending on slave labor. And Henry Kissinger is pissed off that his free slave labor isn't moving across borders, destroying economies for the benefit of the very few. And again, this is just crazy. And again, the article goes on. He says he pointed to the 2008 financial crisis, saying current conditions are even more complex. No, you don't say, really. But he's saying due to the virus, global scale, school closing, restaurants shuttering, and social distancing practices, warns that, of course, this will create damages that will have far more effects because of the shutdown. But again, just clearly here, Henry Kissinger not happy that the world order that he built, that was built on immigration, slave labor, corporate banking profits, elites controlling everyone. He is sad that he is seeing that go away, but he's also calling for, again, anything Henry Kissinger says, you pretty much got to believe the opposite of, because he uses a lot of kind of general BuzzFeed kind of words out there, and we have to understand when he's talking, he usually means the opposite of that. You look at this man's record, what he did as Secretary of State, look at what he did with Richard Nixon, look at what he did at Vietnam. This man does not give a damn about human life, sovereignty, liberty, and freedom. He sees those things as the enemy, and this is why it's up to us to call it out. This is why I confronted Henry Kissinger like 5 times, I think even 6 times. You can watch all those videos if YouTube allows you to even find them anymore. But this man deserves to be called out for his horrible, treacherous, erroneous actions, and it's very fascinating to see him come out with the information that he is coming out right now in this op-ed piece, of course, calling for more security, more of a police state, more of a global network of world government, more of a global world policy, more vaccines, of course, for your safety and security. And whenever tyrants say that, you should run the opposite direction. John, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate you filling in for Tim Pashot. And again, hope you guys appreciated this video. If you did, let us know your comments down below. What is your reaction to these words by Henry Kissinger? We would love to have your feedback, your commentary, which I always try to answer back within the first hour that a video is out. So make sure you click this, the notification button. I think I'm even going to make this a main video because this is a topic that can't be ignored and needs a lot of context on. John, thank you much for joining me. Thank you, amazing, beautiful human beings, for allowing us to be here. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And this is why I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.